And joining us is the coordinator of the Lagos Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, Lola Viva. It's good to have you. Thanks for joining us on The Breakfast Show.
Thank you.
And also with us is human rights activist and lawyer Omolara Oriye.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
So when we're talking about sexual harassment, let me begin with you, Lola. What exactly is sexual harassment? We need to define that very clearly. What constitutes sexual harassment?
Okay, if you don't mind, can I just quote the...
Go ahead.
We actually have a provision in Lagos State, Criminal Law of Lagos State, Section 262, that provides for what amounts to sexual harassment. So I'll just quickly read it. It says, any person who sexually harasses another is guilty of a felony and is liable to imprisonment for 3 years. Sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other visual, verbal, or physical conduct of a sexual nature, which when submitted to or rejected, implicitly or explicitly, affects a person's employment or educational opportunity, or unreasonably interferes with the person's work or educational performance. Implicitly or explicitly suggests that submission to or rejection of the conduct will be a factor in academic or employment decisions, or creates an intimidating, hostile or offensive learning or working environment. So I think that sums it up. Basically, there's a fiduciary relationship. In this case, it's the teacher and the student. And the student's progress is being determined based on whether he or she agrees to this sexual request.
Okay, Omolara, let's talk about the effect or otherwise of sexual harassment in places where it is being perpetrated. What happens to a victim of sexual harassment?
All right, so I usually say that silence is the worst thing that can happen to anyone. When you go through something and you cannot speak it up, you cannot speak up, I think it just demoralizes you in whatever area of life you find yourself. So I think that the major issue, the major problem that sexual harassment causes its victims would definitely be the fact that they are silenced, because people are afraid of victimization. And we are in a society that shames the victims of crimes. In a situation where a victim cannot speak up, then silence will lead to depression. Depression will lead to, lower self-esteem. You cannot achieve your goals. For example, people in schools. I have seen people who drop out of school, because of some sort of pressure or another. So I feel like the major thing that I would point at would be the fact that you are silenced and you cannot reach out and speak up about what you're going through. So I definitely would say that victims of sexual harassment should reclaim their voices. The bill or no bill, new legislation or no legislation, when you speak up about an issue, perpetrators begin to tremble, they begin to hide. And I think that's the starting point.
Okay. But don't you think this bill would actually help give the victim, confidence that when I do speak out, I am protected? Isn't that what this bill,
or at least unheard?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I like to say that prima facie, on the surface of it, the bill provides all that promise. But what happens when it actually happens and we need to implement? Are these students protected? Well, the bill, I read through the little provisions released to the public, and and I saw that the university has to protect you from other lecturers and probably the lecturer in charge, but there's a clause to the bill. You cannot unfairly accuse a lecturer. So what constitutes an unfair accusation? Who was there when it happened?
False accusation.
Yes, false accusation. Thank you very much. So my point is, it is your word against the lecturer's word most of the time. So how do you get out of such a bind?
How would they carry out the investigation if they need to investigate?
Exactly. Yeah, I think I want to believe they will set up a panel. It's unfair, but this is the issue we're facing with sexual offenses, sexual and gender-based violence. It's always he said, she said.
Yes.
You need to have evidence. It's one thing to say I was, let me use the word assaulted, but where's your evidence? It's not, when you get to court, the magistrate or the judge may side with you, but he or she cannot convict if there's no evidence before him or her. So you need to have evidence. There was actually, this is quite interesting, because we had a case of a student, not in Nigeria, Benin Republic, and she got our number and she said her lecturer is constantly harassing her. And of course, we couldn't interfere because of jurisdiction. But we advised her that this is what you need to do. You need to set this person up. The next time you go to his office, because she says she will sit down and he will come and he will start touching her. Oh, you're so pretty. I want to marry you. You know all those things. So, yes, it's okay. We believe her. We're brought up to believe her. But where's the evidence? So we told her, you have to set this man up. We can give you a spy camera, a concealed microphone, but it's not enough for you to say someone is harassing you.
Isn't that where the challenge really is?
Yes.
That evidence,
the evidence,
you know, issue. And then again, that provision that says if you accuse a lecturer falsely,
yes,
you're liable to, maybe you may not go to jail, but you will be punished for it.
But I think it's important that that provision is there, because it's subject, that kind of thing is subject to abuse. Any little thing, a lady can, or a man can come up and say, this lecturer is harassing me. But I think most importantly, aside from protecting the victim, I think what this bill tries to do is act as a deterrent. If the teachers, all the school administrators, they know that there is this law, and if somebody has enough evidence to prosecute, I may be looking at 5 years. It serves as a checking point that, okay, or let me even re-strategize. So I think ultimately it's supposed to be a deterrent.
Okay, you're aware of the VAP bill is now an act, which an aspect of it, of course, deals with issue of rape, issue of incest, and quite a number of this section also has to do with sexual harassment. How many states do you think have domesticated the VAP Act, Lara?
Right now, I think none. No state has duplicated this act or even domesticated them. But I think that it's a work in progress. Like that brings me to the point of education. People need to be educated. I'm sorry, I'm taking you a little bit back, but
that's fine.
Something pointed. Yes. Now, when people understand and are educated about a certain issue, they react differently. For example, this section of the bill that provides that you can't unjustly accuse somebody. I think the idea is people need to be educated about these things. People need to understand that sexual violence or harassment is not just, you do not just report with word of mouth. Most times I get clients in my office and they come and they tell me surreal stories and I'm like, do you have evidence? And no, what are you doing? So I think we need to educate people, both male, female, everybody. Let them understand that when you're dealing with a perpetrator of sexual harassment, you need to be smart. You need to know what to do so that the law can help you. The presence of the law alone is not enough. Yeah. People need to be educated, need to understand that the law can help you only if you do the right things that you need to do.
Okay, so, what about the case of verbal and emotional harassment?
Exactly.
The bill is silent
on that. As this bill says, verbal harassment, is another angle to it. I mean, if a lecturer comes and says, look, you're pretty, I really like you, I think I'd want you to be my whatever.
Wife. Actually, I think that speaks to the my initial reaction when I saw the bill. I thought it wasn't complete, but I needed to applaud the
drafters.
Yes, I needed to applaud that because this is an issue that has, it's in deep into the fabric of our society. Yeah. And finally, somebody is speaking up about it in a way that we can actually help. Yeah. It's different when we talk about it on the streets or in our offices. Now there's something actually being done. So I think that I would really, really recommend that probably the bill should be, revisited, like the drafting should be revisited, because most times verbal and emotional abuse is more harmful than actual physical violence. But because of the Nigerian society, we are tuned to think that things need to be physical all the time. We don't understand. For example, some of our laws do not even provide damages for emotional damages and stuff like that. So I think this bill is just moving in the direction of our old laws, and things need to change. At some point in this country, we need to open up our minds to the possibility that things do not actually need to be physical all the time. Verbal violence is real, emotional violence is real, and in my thinking, I would say that it's actually pretty worse than physical violence.
Okay, let's move forward on this. A United Nations report states that 1 out of 3 women experience sexual harassment in their lifetime, including yours truly. Now, here in Nigeria, there are regular reports of young Nigerians, especially female students in tertiary institutions, facing sexual harassment from lecturers.
Over the years, there has been no clear-cut, effective legislation to checkmate or eliminate this form. Our institutions of higher learning for the sexual harassment bill sponsored by Senator Ove Omo Agege, which passed first and second reading last month, seeks to correct this.
Now, the bill expressly allows sexually harassed students, their parents or guardians to seek civil remedies in damages against sexual predator lecturers before or after their successful criminal prosecution by the state. The bill provides that an educator shall be guilty of committing an offense of sexual harassment against a student if he or she has sexual intercourse with the student.
All right, he or she shall be guilty if she has sexual intercourse with a student or demands for sex from a student or a prospective student as a condition to study in an institution. He or she shall be guilty if she has sexual intercourse with a student or demands for sex from a student or a prospective student as a condition for giving that student a passing grade.
Now, he or she shall be guilty if he solicits sex from or makes sexual advances at a student when the sexual solicitation or sexual advances result in an intimidating, hostile or offensive environment for the student. He or she shall be guilty if he directs or induces another person to commit any act of sexual harassment under this act or cooperates in the commission of sexual harassment by another person.
He or she shall be guilty if she grabs, hugs, rubs, strokes, touches or pinches the breasts, hair, lips, hips, buttocks, or any other sensual parts of the body of a student. That means you can't just walk up to a student and say your hair is beautiful. You have to be very careful now. Or he or she shall be guilty if he displays, gives or sends by hand, courier, electronic or any other means naked or sexually explicit pictures or videos or sex-related objects to a student.
He or she shall be guilty if he whistles or winks at a student or screams, exclaims, jokes or makes sexually complimentary or uncomplimentary remarks about a student's physique. When passed into law, the bill makes it a criminal offense for any educator in a university, polytechnic or any other tertiary educational institution to violate or exploit the student-lecturer ethical relationship for sexual pleasures, and so on and so on and so forth. Let's bring in our guests here, Lola and Omolara. What do you think about this? I mean, these are very wide, provisions here. And I'm excited about the aspect that says a vice-chancellor of a university or a rector of a polytechnic shall be guilty
if he conceals.
If, he does not take action within 1 week of a student's, complaint that's made. I mean, how about that?
I think that makes me a little bit more comfortable with the legislation. I think that when you hold people in power responsible, things always shape up in Nigeria. I think in as much as I would like this legislation to be probably a bit wider in coverage and all that, I think that I definitely agree with this part of the legislation. I think when you hold vice chancellors responsible, the atmosphere of the university or whatever school would change when it comes straight from the head. Because I think back in the day, the issue was that lecturers would, talk within one another and then frustrate that girl and then she can't speak up. But now you know that you can report to the police. And if you can report to the police, actually independently, you can report to the vice chancellor. And now if something is not done by the university in 1 week, the vice chancellor is in trouble. I think that is the language Nigerians understand. And I think that would work in this situation.
Okay, what about the remarks and compliments and where do you draw the line? It seemed like a thin line really. And a wink, where do you draw the line?
Why should a lecturer be winking at a student? I think we have to be more professional. And it's just amazing because this will catch a lot of lecturers winking, touching, making unnecessary comments. I mean, I'm here to study. Why are you winking at me? But I think most importantly,
what if the lecturer has a twitch? Some people have twitch.
I guess he has to be able to prove it medically.
You know what? I think most importantly, there needs to be aggressive enlightenment and sensitization. Students, this is an empowerment tool. Students need to know that these provisions exist. They need to know. So it's not enough for us to have this bill, which hopefully will come into law, but there has to be aggressive enlightenment and sensitization.
What would you say about a situation where the blame is actually put on the victim? I mean, you hear cases of what were you wearing,
but
you know, and
well,
stuff
it doesn't
like
come
that.
in. It doesn't come up. There's no defense. The only defense is if you falsely accuse the lecturer or the vice chancellor or whoever. I want to believe that the bill is silent on the issue of defense. It is never about what
the other person looks
the
like.
Student wore. It's not. It's you took a decision. It's your choice. You saw her. Maybe her body was exposed, but you have an option to look away. But no, you insisted on making sexual advancement on her. So it's not, that doesn't, I don't think that should come in.
All right, let's bring in Moses Omogana again to tell us what people are saying out there on social media concerning this.
The hashtag sexual harassment bill. You know, like you raised a very interesting point. What if the blame falls on the victim? Well, if your student is indecently dressed, take her to the right authorities. Do not molest her, as you will do to your own child.
Who decides what is indecent?
Who is the right authority?
That's another
question.
Authorities like Omolara and Vivo, and of course, you know, every university or school has a panel. So yes, in that regard. So let's find out what Nigerians are saying in view. Hashtag sexual harassment bill. Very first comment comes from Martin G. and says. This tweet was actually at Bukola Saraki, and it says, hashtag sexual harassment bill without a reformed police is just a piece of legislation for the museum. Hashtag deal with roots. And Aina Chris says, the sexual harassment bill by the Senate will help stamp out all forms of harassment to make our schools more conducive for students. That actually, you know, was an original quote by Senate President Saraki. And Wale Gates says, find the sexual harassment bill a bit strange in 2016. If you need a government law not to commit any form of harassment, you need brain evaluation. And TK says at Nigerian Senate at Bukola Saraki, whatever laws apply to Nigeria at large are equally applicable to campuses in Nigeria. Think wide. Hashtag sexual harassment bill. Now this has been the tweet, you know, of the moment, as many has called it, and it comes from Dino Melaya, Senator Dino Melaya, and he says, hashtag sexual harassment bill is both-sided. Females should also be cautioned because not all of us have the anointing to resist. That was, you know, literally Senator Dino Melaya. So I would like Omolara, you know, to react to that comment. What do you think? What was your reaction when you heard that?
Okay, I would like to go to the roots of this issue.
Yeah.
The African society, coming down to Nigeria, has always been plagued with a thinking that women, you know, that females amount to a plaything or some sort of, you know, prize to be won. I think the mentality issue, like I was saying this morning, literally, as a person, that no bill can change anybody's mindset or mentality. We need to understand, Senator Dino Melaya, with all due respect, women are not playthings. We're human beings and we are like men. If you saw a naked man, do you need anointing to resist? But the moment people start to see women as equals with men, the moment you begin to see us as human beings who have a brain, who have, you know, passions and understanding and education like you guys, I think the issue of sexual harassment can actually definitely reduce. You will see a situation where a woman would probably do something amazing, and the only compliment a man would be able to give would be, oh, pretty hair. Excuse me, I went to university like you did. And we both have an education. We're both working on a project. I probably have commended you about one or two things that you've done, but no. The only thing you have noticed about me is the fact that my hair is natural or relaxed.
Okay, let's look at another flip to Dino Melaya's comment. What if the student offers a sexual gratification for rewards, for instance, for marks or grades? What happens to that?
Well, I think that's when, if that kind of case goes to court, obviously the lecturer will not be punished because, well, it also depends on the age.
Does the lecturer have a choice to say no and actually report this offending student
when being seduced?
I don't think that's, I think the bill is silent on that.
How much can the lecturer resist? How far? I mean, you know, perhaps,
what steps can he take?
How much of the anointing
can he get when a student is pursuing him vigorously to get him to bed?
Yes. Isn't that where this law comes in as a deterrent? You know, when he knows it could cost him the next 5 years of his life.
Well, it could be different if the student involved is a minor.
If it is the minor, then
of course the bigger blame goes to the lecturer. But what I really want to find out from you, Viva, is, you know, before now, one could actually sue or press charges, you know, when your right to personal dignity has been infringed upon. Now we have a sexual harassment bill, which actually goes beyond, physical harassment. It actually involves verbal harassment. Are we not going to have, at some point where we're having a repetitive law with this, coming on?
Just to address, the right to dignity is not actually justiciable. So you can't go to court for your right to accommodation and all that. It's in the Constitution. These are things that should be observed. These are things that should be taken into consideration during policy formulation. But you can't just really bring an action for right to dignity that it has been infringed. But then I think it's not, as I was saying to her, I think because of the prevalence of sexual harassment in our institutions, I think it's trite that we have a law or a bill that is devoted to that area. And as she said, it's been ongoing for years. Ladies or men have actually dropped out from school. So I think it's okay for us to have a law that is devoted to that area to address those issues. So I don't think it's duplication.
Okay, but this law is not restricted to tertiary institutions, to all institutions in Nigeria.
No,
well, essentially, polytechnics,
not just universities, perhaps you meant to say.
Not just universities.
Because it won't apply to children.
How about the workplace? How about corporate institutions?
That's a different matter. I know last year there was a rushed, bill.
Yeah, 2014
yes,
sexual offences bill.
Sexual offences bill.
We kicked against.
I guess we will, find time to even look at all of those. Moses, as always.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so
Busolami, don't be left out. Yeah, there we go.
Now, the bill also has a provision to punish students who falsely accuse lecturers of sexual harassment. We needed to remind you of that. Of course, we already touched on that. How do you deal, with a student who falsely? I'm reminded of the Queen's College case that happened. I don't know how far that is gone now. Any of you?
They're still investigating. It's now with the CRU, the Complaints Response Unit of the Nigerian Police. So they're still investigating. But then the Federal Ministry of Education released its report that they couldn't find any evidence. And I'm thinking, which rightful woman would want to come forward to that kind of panel with a child?
Okay. Let's some aspect of the bill, of course, or the totality of the bill is that, lecturers should just keep away from females, just do your job. And some people have argued, what happens to a relationship that just thrives under such atmosphere, and at the end of the day, the lecturer marries the student? What happens? That means that there will be no room for such interaction anymore?
I know on good authority that for most universities in the UK, you cannot have a sexual relationship with your teacher. And people thrive. They leave. People find husbands and find wives.
Well, some of them marry their professors. I
think that it would be nice for you to probably graduate. See, I think some laws are not convenient, but for a society like ours, we cannot always push for convenience. I'm sorry, I might seem a bit on the extreme, but I've actually thought about that because I am all up for consensual adult relationships. Those are decent. But the problem is, how do we draw the line? Exactly. How do we actually know? I think everybody should obey the law. And if you feel like marrying your lecturer or your lecturer wants to marry you, you can do that on your own time, not while work is being done. Because one problem we have in this country is that we lack professionalism. I saw that tweet about if you need a law to know that you shouldn't harass people. It's the truth. Why do we need a law to tell you that when you're at work or when you're at school, you should behave professionally?
And that's where, my next question comes in. Beyond these laws and all of that, as a society, are we really ready to, put an end to this scourge, or to even, not just tolerate it?
I think we are, especially for other sexual vices, especially rape, defilement, domestic violence. There's an increased zero tolerance to these issues. Now you have neighbors calling on behalf of a woman that is being beaten, saying, my neighbor is beating his wife, please help her. Before, I don't think it was like, let me mind my family, you mind yours. So there's an increased zero tolerance. But the law is there.
I like to agree with you to an extent, but the society, the Nigerian police is part of the Nigerian society. How would you score the Nigerian police when it comes to cases like this?
In Lagos State, I always say there's a new face of the Nigerian police. there's a new phase. It's a gradual process. We need to understand that. It's the police is a reflection of the society.
Talking about Lagos State still, just this lady that was killed, the Shonde case, there were reports that the neighbors actually reported issue of assault you know, coming from that home, and even the sister herself went to the police to report that this woman was being assaulted, and the police said you can't report on the behalf of that person. There's no third party. You have to let the person come and calm herself to make such report.
And even when the victim does the reporting, she's told, look, this is a domestic matter. Let's see how we can settle this.
That is changing.
But this just happened a couple of
I don't particularly agree that that's the new face to the police. I'm sorry, but I do not. See, there might be a tiny bit of change starting to try to probably maybe gonna come up at some point. But I do not think, see, I have had interactions with the police, and okay, I always get angry when I see the police because they do not do their jobs. Now, the issue is, this issue of sexual harassment and all that, I don't know if the police is equipped to help. To deal with it. Seriously, I don't know. If there's this new face of the new phase of human rights, oh no, do not let me get started. But the idea is, I believe that there's a future. I believe that, you know, things are changing. I would not take that away from Lagos State. But the idea is, what happens to Ekiti State? What happens to Yola, Adamawa? Nigeria is not Lagos State. No, so we cannot measure progress with Lagos.
By Lagos
but you
standards.
see, the unfortunate thing is, well, it goes back to our constitution. Issues of crime is on the concurrent list. So it's not enough for the National Assembly to enact a piece of legislation. Other states have to replicate. So if other states are unwilling to replicate relevant provisions, then you can't blame a state that is willing to protect the rights of its citizenry. And you cannot also blame the National Assembly for not forcing other states to replicate.
Okay, let me bring out this aspect, which I find very interesting. It doesn't really have to do with this particular bill, but the 2015 bill had mandated the storing of names of sexual offenders in a database for institutional and social discrimination. Will this help?
I think
whether
so.
It is, you know, in the workplace, in the school.
Yes, these are all deterrence tools. Yes. In Lagos State, we have the sex offenders register as well. Okay. Ultimately, it's supposed to deter would-be perpetrators. These are all deterrence tools. You can't have enough of deterrence tools.
Yes. I also think that if with a register like that, it could get digitized at some point. Yeah. And before you get a job, you're screened. Yeah. I think the moment we begin to, most of the lecturers, market people, in whatever phase of life you find yourself, there are a bunch of sexual deviants and offenders hiding. So I think this register would help us. I'm not saying that everyone is bad, but I'm saying that with such register, we would be able to probably not give sensitive positions to people who have a record. For example, the person is trying to be a lecturer and has a record. Probably not make him a lecturer, maybe admin staff, deal with files.
Shouldn't even be
sexually harass files.
Shouldn't even be in an institution where you have
I agree with that, but I'm just saying that in a situation where they have probably are qualified or something.
Let's go back to the schools themselves, the security guards at the school, the clinics we have at the school. Do you think we are equipped enough to be able to handle such cases? Where
especially in the case of evidence,
and where a student can just, maybe a student has just been assaulted, can just rush in and say, I was just raped by do you think the schools should do something about this themselves?
Oh, okay. I think that in that regard, that's actually a question that got me like almost thinking, because now I begin to think in my head, the security people that we had in uni, do I think that they are equipped enough to handle such issues? I am not sure. But I think the thing we can do is, with this new law and with this new bill that we are hoping passes into a law, we're hoping that this would cause a general upgrade in the university system. You know, it would cause a body of security personnel who can handle issues like this and would not mess up evidence or whatever is given to them. So right now, I do not think that the security personnel in universities or tertiary institutions across the country can handle such things. These men can barely open the gates. So I really do not...
I won't even want the security man to know that a lady has just been raped because of stigmatization. So I think there should be like a designated person you report to.
But if they are trained to handle such, there's no point telling the other person that this person, because if they are trained and equipped, then it becomes perhaps a unit of that section.
So you have, like most institutions have counselors. So you have a designated person that you report to, because you don't want this kind of information.
The counselors might not be there at night. They close by 4 p.m.
But what will a security guard
before we hardly have time, Lola, I wanted to have a last take on this. What has your experience been, especially when it comes to students? Do you have students reporting to you, and how do you help them?
We've just had one, actually, since 2014. It was just one that we had, and unfortunately she wasn't even in Lagos. So we don't get it that often, but I think that's where this bill comes in. And it's not, as I said, it's not, the letters of the law come alive when people test laws. Yeah. You need to test these laws. And I think human rights activists need to ginger or encourage students to test these laws. When we get to court, we would have interpretation of the laws. We'll see if you can get civil compensation. We'll see if a lecturer can actually go down for this kind of offense.
On that note, I want to say thank you so much, Titi Lola Vivo Adeniyi, Coordinator, Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team. It's been nice having you on TVC Breakfast, and of course Omolara Oriye, lawyer and human rights and social justice advocate. It's been nice talking with you. Nice. I will hope the next time you're here, we'll be able to say we have made a lot of progress.
Yes, we hope so too.
Okay.